Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ Resurrection Part 1 is confirmed, with Gibson describing it as an acid trip and teasing a 2025 release. However, the sequel is already stirring up some controversy. The original, The Passion of the Christ, made a huge impact when it hit theaters in 2004, especially with American evangelicals, and did well internationally. With a budget of $30 million, it grossed $612.1 million, making it the highest-grossing Christian film and the highest-grossing independent film of all time. It also held the record as the highest-grossing R-rated film in the U.S. with $370.8 million, a title it kept for 20 years. On top of that, the film earned 3 nominations at the 77th Academy Awards in 2005 for Best Makeup, Best Cinematography, and Best Original Score. Now, a sequel is in the works. The film was mainly inspired by the Gospel of John, but it also incorporated Catholic traditions and the visions of Anne Catherine Emmerich. However, it sparked controversy due to accusations of anti-Semitism, which were compounded by Gibson's own personal controversies. Gibson stated that he has 2 versions of the script that he's working on. One is more grounded, whereas the other explores various realms and includes fallen angels in hell. Gibson states, "I have 2 scripts, and one of them is very structured and very strong script, and kind of more what should expect, and the other is like an acid trip, because you're going into other realms and stuff. I mean, you're in hell and you're watching the angels fall. It's like crazy." According to Edward Penton from the National Catholic Register, the film will cover step-by-step the events leading up to the resurrection as experienced by the apostles, but will also follow the intrigues that took place in Herod's palace, and end with the events that took place in Jerusalem on the resurrection. Furthermore, Resurrection will be a non-linear, introspective film where other realms and dimensions will be explored. The film's title implies Part 2 is coming and will be released at a later date. According to Caviezel, it might be 2 films, could be 3, but I think it's 2. According to Consequence, citing a report from Ital Press, Mel Gibson is currently in Malta discussing with local authorities the possibility of using the island as a filming location for The Passion of the Christ Resurrection. The plan is to begin filming in 2025. Both Gibson and star Jim Caviezel, who will reprise his role for the sequel, have been outspoken about their plans for The Passion of the Christ 2. Gibson first announced the project in 2016, and Caviezel made it clear in 2018 that he believed the sequel would be the biggest film in history. The first film was one of Caviezel's most prominent roles, and since then, he has appeared in a range of films and TV shows, including Outlander, The Prisoner, and Person of Interest. He also returned to the biblical epic genre in Paul, Apostle of Christ, where he portrayed the Apostle Luke alongside James Faulkner's Paul. Now, 20 years after the original film, Caviezel is back for The Passion of the Christ Resurrection, where the sequel picks up just 3 days after the events of the first movie. So how will Passion of the Christ Resurrection convince viewers that only 3 days have passed? Recently, while talking to the press about his new film, Monster Summer, in which he stars alongside Mason Thames, Lorraine Bracco, Kevin James, and others, Mel Gibson addressed how he plans to bridge the gap between The Passion of the Christ and Resurrection. While he didn't reveal his exact directorial approach, he hinted that he has a concept in mind. "So it's like, I have ways of dealing with that because, 20 years ago is supposed to be 3 days later, so it has its own peculiar set of problems which I think I can solve." Several actors from The Passion of the Christ are likely to return for Resurrection, including Maia Morgenstern, Monica Bellucci, Francesco DeVito, Christo Givkov, and others who played key biblical figures. The big question, though, is whether Mel Gibson will bring back the original cast or recast some of the roles. Not all of the actors are still around. Christo Givkov tragically passed away from lung cancer in 2023, so it could be a mix of returning cast members and new actors filling in the gaps. It's now pretty common for filmmakers to use de-aging visual effects to let actors play younger versions of themselves, so the original cast could still return for The Passion of the Christ Resurrection. While it's unclear how much Mel Gibson will feature Jim Caviezel as Christ, the same logic could apply to his performance. One thing we can probably expect, if de-aging VFX are involved, Resurrection will likely have a bigger budget than the original's $30 million. However, Randall Wallace, who worked on the original, wasn't ready to dive into financial details, previously saying, "It's too early to talk money. This is such a huge and sacred subject." It is indeed a sacred and huge project, which is why it will need to steer clear of any allegation of anti-Semitism. Before The Passion of the Christ was released, there were significant criticisms over perceived anti-Semitic content in the film. This led 20th Century Fox to initially pass on distributing it, after being informed by New York Assemblyman Dov Hikind that a protest outside the News Corporation building had influenced their decision. Hikind also warned other companies not to distribute the film, stating that it would be harmful to Jews worldwide. A joint committee from the Secretariat for Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Anti-Defamation League reviewed a version of the script before the movie's release. They released a statement, calling it one of the most concerning texts in terms of anti-Semitic potential they had seen in 25 years. The committee highlighted that the storyline portrayed Jesus as being relentlessly pursued by an evil group of Jews, led by the high priest Caiaphas, who pressured Pilate into condemning Jesus. This narrative, they argued, had fueled centuries of anti-Semitism in Christian societies, a story rejected by the Roman Catholic Church at Vatican and by many Protestant churches. The committee expressed concerns that unless Gibson had altered the script, the film retained the potential to undermine the Church's repudiation of classic Christian anti-Semitism. The ADL also issued a statement stressing that for filmmakers to do justice to the biblical accounts of the Passion, they needed to base their vision on sound scholarship and an understanding of how past Passion plays have been used to attack Jews and Judaism. They warned that without such understanding, films like The Passion of the Christ could distort history and fuel hate against Jews. The line, "His blood is on us and our children," from The Passion of the Christ was widely perceived as an example of anti-Semitism. Historically, this quote has been interpreted by some as a curse placed upon the Jewish people. In response to requests from certain Jewish groups to remove it from the film, Gibson and his team chose to retain the line but removed the subtitles, leaving the original Hebrew dialogue intact. When asked about the controversial line, Gibson defended his decision to keep it, stating that he believed it did not implicate Jews specifically, but rather applied to all people involved in Jesus' crucifixion, including those who came after. He also remarked that keeping the line was important to him for artistic integrity, despite the potential backlash. The film's portrayal and the anti-Semitism accusations were satirized in the South Park episode The Passion of the Jew, where the characters react to the film in exaggerated ways. Eric Cartman leads a neo-Nazi rally, Kyle has nightmares about the violence in the film, and Stan and Kenny try to get a refund from Gibson. The allegations against Gibson were further complicated by his 2006 arrest for driving under the influence, during which he made anti-Semitic remarks to the arresting officer, saying, "Fucking Jews. The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. Are you a Jew?" This incident contributed to the intensification of the anti-Semitism allegations surrounding Gibson and his work. Well, that's it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this and other exciting upcoming movies. See you next time.